What's up everyone? So lately I was getting very bored doing stuff for clients and I decided to create a small personal project just to make something creative that I will enjoy. In my case, to get the creativity out of my system, I decided to create a music visualizer for a cool song I've been enjoying lately. I posted the result on my Instagram and many of you asked for a tutorial. So here I am with a step-by-step guide on how I made it. My main goal is to show you that sometimes to create an awesome scenes, we can use a very basic techniques that you all probably already know about. So with that said, let's get started. Alright, so I already created a simple full HD composition. I leave the link for downloading all the assets I'm using in this tutorial in the descriptions below. And now I'll drag the video to my comp, and first we want to get rid of the background here. For this we will use the Roto Brush tool. So let's select it and double click on the video to start working on it. If you want to scale your brush, make sure to head over to Window and click on Brush. Now, if you can change the properties here as I couldn't, don't worry, it's just a weird software error. To fix this, just select some other tool and then select the Roto Brush once again. Alright, so now let's scale the brush and select the areas we want to leave in the frame. As you can notice, we got some error here telling us that the frame rates do not match. After Effects is talking about the frame rate of the video, which is 24 frames per second, and the frame rate of our main comp, which is 30 frames per second. To fix this, all we need to do is make sure our comp frame rate matches the frame rate of the video we are working with. Otherwise, the roto process will not be good. Awesome, so now let's keep selecting the layerness and making sure we got it right. To unselect not relevant areas, hold down Alt or Option on Mac while selecting them. It will erase the selection. Okay, so now I'll speed up this process, and in the meantime you do your work. I want to mention that if you are a beginner in After Effects or you are at a junior level and you just don't get After Effects right, even after watching a bunch of tutorials, it's happening because you don't have the right learning path. So if you finally want to work with After Effects stress-free, I have prepared the perfect journey for you to hop on. I've structured the perfect way to learn After Effects, fast, easy, and most importantly, fun. I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to check it out. Alright, back to the tutorial. So after selecting the object, let's hit freeze to let After Effects separate it from the background. And if you missed some areas or want to fix some issues like I have here, make sure to unfreeze the roto process and only then reselect the areas you missed. Now we can let After Effects process the changes by playing the video and letting After Effects finish checking each frame. Once done and we are happy with the results, we must freeze the changes we made so we have the roto process completed. Great, so now we can exit the layers panel viewport and move on to pre-compose this layer, because it will be much easier for us to add some effects to it in the future. Let's adjust the name and make sure we are checking these two boxes. And before we move on, let's enter this pre-comp and adjust the pre-comp size to fit the character we have here. Make sure not to scale it too much down like I did here. So let's fix this real quick. Before moving on to the next step, let's make this pre-comp play in a perfect loop. For this, let's stand at the beginning of the video and take a snapshot of this frame. After this, let's move a few seconds forward and find a point in time where the character is in the same position. To check it, we can click on the show snapshot function. If you are not in the correct frame, just move backward or forward while using the show snapshot function. Alright, once we found the time point, we can press N to shorten the timeline to this point and then crop the unnecessary areas. So the video starts playing seamlessly again, which means we are good. So now we can go back to the master comp and make this pre-comp play endlessly. For this, go to the end of the pre-comp and enable time remap. Since this ends and starts with the exact same frame, we can activate the loop out expression for the keyframes we have here, which are representing the beginning and the end of the pre-comp. But before that, we must stand one frame before the final keyframe and create a new keyframe here. Then delete the last one. This will ensure we don't have problems after applying the expression. If you see the pre-comp cropped like this, all you need to do is extend this layer, and now what's happening between these two keyframes will repeat itself endlessly, and this way you can use the stretch time function to make the character work faster or slower. In my case, I bring it back to normal. Alright, so once we are done setting up the character, now we are ready to move on to the next step and create the moving floor. For this, we will use the shape tool. So let's make sure no layer is selected and double click on the shape tool to create a new rectangle. Now let's uncheck the constraint proportions to scale down only the height of the shape. Now let's select the shape and use the align tool to place it at the bottom of the comp and place it below the character. I think it's too big, so let's go back and resize the shape height to some lower value. Alright, so now let's create the illusion of the floor be in motion. But first let's change the name of this layer to floor, and now to make it happen we can use two effects. We can use the roughen edges effect, or we can use the turbulent displace effect. In this case, I will use the turbulent displace. So let's add it to the shape layer and now play around with the properties to make the floor look a little bit more natural with bumps and dips. Great, this looks good. And now let's make the floor move to create the illusion that the lion is moving. For this, let's stand at the beginning of the timeline and create a keyframe for the offset property. Now let's decide where we want to finish the animation while making sure that the last frame is exactly like the first frame to make the animation play in a perfect loop. Of course, we don't have to do it, but I prefer to. So for this, we can use the snapshot tool once again and find the perfect timing. Alright, so now let's move the x-axis of the offset to the left to create the illusion that the floor is moving. Let's move it here and see how that looks. Our goal is to make sure that the floor is moving exactly at the rhythm of the walking character to make the illusion believable. Otherwise, it will look very weird. If you want the floor to move a little bit faster, you need to move the x-axis a bit further. So let's do it now. I think it looks better. Okay, so now let's make our line here look like a silhouette. And for this, all we need to do is add the fill effect on the pre-comp and change the color to black. And to make the entire thing look a little bit more in a grungy motion, I'll add a turbulence displace effect to the line pre-comp, and I play around with the properties to make the silhouette look a little bit more grungy. And now if we want to animate the grunge texture we created, we can use the evolution property, but if you want to be animated in a blocky way, which will fit the look of the scene better, we can open up the evolution options and create a time expression for the random seed property. So we can write here time equals 8, which means the look of our grunge texture will be changed 8 times in 1 second. And if you zoom in, I hope you can notice that the texture is moving. In my opinion, it looks very nice. If you want the texture to be a little bit more noticeable, you can play around with the properties of the Turbulent Displace effect. Great, it looks very good. And now let's add a very cool red highlight on the silhouette. For this, let's right click on the pre-comp, go to layer styles and add the inner shadow effect. Now let's change the color to red and bump up the opacity to 100%. Make sure we're changing the blending mode of this effect to screen so we can see the bright red color we added here. Now we can play around with the inner shadow properties to make the highlight look softer, or in my case a bit harder, which in my opinion looks better. Finally, let's adjust the angle of the shadow, and again in my case I'll set it to 90 degrees. Awesome! So once we're done with this, we can close the properties of this layer and move on to create a very cool grungy moving texture for the background. And if you're enjoying this tutorial, please like the video and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Alright, so first let's add our grunge texture asset to the scene and place it below all the layers. As you can see, my grunge texture is a very big layer, which is okay, but in my opinion is too big, so I'll scale it down a little bit. And before animating it, let's move to the beginning of the timeline and isolate this layer to focus only on it and start creating the animation. So to animate it, we will use the position property. So let's create the first keyframe here, and now hold Shift and press R to add the rotation property as well. Create the first keyframe for the rotation too. Now let's zoom in on the timeline and move one frame forward. After that, let's rotate the layer 20 degrees and move it to somewhere around here. Now we need to repeat this process a few times. To make it faster, instead of moving one frame manually, we can use the shortcut, hold down Ctrl or Command on Mac and press the right arrow key on your keyboard. Now rotate the layer again 20 degrees and move it to a different position. Let's repeat this process until we created almost a full rotation of the layer. I'll speed up this process for now. Alright, so now if we look at what we've got, it looks like we have a crazy movement here. So first, to make it look better, we first need to select all the keyframes and convert them to hold keyframes. For now it still looks weird because the animation is happening very fast. To slow the animation down, hold down Alt or Option on Mac and drag the last keyframe forward in time. Let's say to second number 2. Let's see how that looks. I think it looks nice, but in my opinion we need to slow the animation down a little bit more. I think even more, so I'll drag the keyframes to second number 3. That looks better, and now let's make this animation play in the endless loop. For this, we will create the loop out cycle expression for both the position and the rotation properties. Now this animation plays endlessly and we are ready to move on to the next step, creating the text behind the character. For this, let's select the text tool, and in my case I will write wake up because this is the name of the song. Now let's choose a nice bold sans serif font. I'll use the impact font. Let's scale it up. Let's center the text and make sure all the letters are in caps. I'll set the size to 600. And let's finish by aligning the text to the center of the comp using the align tool. Okay, now I'll delete the space I had here because this is the design I decided to go with. And now let's color the text in red. Great, now let's make the text move to the left using the motion tile effect. But before using it, I want to show you what will happen if we will apply this effect to the original text layer without pre-composing it. When we apply the effect and change the tile center property values, the text will move nicely, but look what will happen if we decide to scale up the text. It ruins the design and creates a weird look. So I'll delete everything and bring the text back to normal. That's why in cases like this, when using the motion tile effect, I prefer to pre-compose my object or layer into a separate pre-comp and then enter it to adjust the size of the pre-comp. We can get rid of the unnecessary empty areas we have here, so let's change the height to 600. Okay, so now when we go back to the master comp and apply the motion tile effect and try to scale up the pre-comp, the motion tile effect will remain working properly and the text will look normal. And now if you don't want to have a large distance between the duplicates of the text, all we need to do is enter the pre-comp and make the text be closer to the borders of the pre-comp. Now in the master comp we'll get a nice and seamless duplicate of the text. Great, now we can start animating the motion tile effect starting at the beginning of the timeline. Let's open the keyframe of the floor animation to see when it ends, so we can time it together. Let's now create the first keyframe for the tile center property with the current value. We can press U to see the keyframes on this layer. Now let's go to the end of the animation and change the value by moving the x-axis to the left. The most important thing is to place the text in the exact same position as it was at the beginning of the animation to get a nice seamless loop. We can check it by watching the animation from the end to see that it ends and starts without a jump in the animation. That looks great, and we can close the layers and bring the text layer behind the floor and scale it up a little bit. Let's also move it down a little. Okay, that looks nice. And now let's zoom in a bit in the preview because I want to add some grunge textures to the text as well. And to do it quickly, we can play around with different blending modes of the text pre-comp to make the text blend with our animation in the background. To switch quickly between all the blending modes, hold down the shift key and press plus or minus on the keyboard. In our case, we'll use the hard mix blending mode, and as you can see, if we see these areas, there are some areas in the text where we get a very small grainy texture from the background blended into the text. In my opinion, it looks very good. Now, to make it look a bit more interesting, we can make the text look a bit more grungy by adding the Turbulent Displace effect on it. So let's copy the already animated effect we have on the line pre-comp and paste it on the text pre-comp. Now you can play around with the properties to fit the effect to the text. Very nice. We have a perfectly looped visualizer and it looks great, but we can make it look even better by adding the posterized time effect. This will make the entire scene move in a more grungy stylized motion, which fits our design. For this, create a new adjustment layer, let's name it posterized time, and add the posterized time effect to it. Set the frame rate to 12, and as you can see, it looks very cool now. And now I want to show you the final trick to make this thing look even cooler by adding a glowing eye to the line. For this, let's enter the line walk cycle pre-comp and use the tracker functions to make it happen. If you don't see this tab, you can open it through the window menu. Then select the timeline we have here to be able to use the tracker features. We want to use these features because we want the shape that we will create for the eye to follow the motion of the head. So for this, we will use the track motion function. Now go to the beginning of the timeline and expand this preview so we can see what we're doing. Now place the track point in the area of the eye and focus this point on a high contrast area so After Effects can follow this point in a more accurate way. Once we place it in the right spot, press play to let After Effects track the motion. And while After Effects is doing its thing, I just want to remind you again to subscribe to my channel if you love After Effects tutorials. Okay, so once After Effects is done, we need to create some object in the scene to attach the motion we just tracked. In this case, the best thing is to create a null object. Then use the normal preview panel to bring the null to the area of the eye or the area of the track point we have here. After this, select the video and add the target of this tracked motion to our null in the scene. Finally, hit OK, then apply, and make sure the motion applies to both the X and Y axes. By doing this, we now have a null object that follows the motion of the head, which means we can create any shape or bring any layer to this pre-comp and parent it to the null. Then we can add a glow effect to it and duplicate the glow to get some better results. And before moving on, we need to parent the shape to the null because right now the shape is not moving. So make sure you are standing at the exact same time point where the null matches the position of the shape you created, and then parent the eye to the null. Now it moves with the head. You can now rename this shape layer to eye, but now if we go back to the master comp, we won't see the eye we created inside this pre-comp because we applied a fill effect on the pre-comp. To fix this, all we need to do is to cut the fill effect from the pre-comp and paste it on the video layer inside this pre-comp. Now we can see the eye perfectly, but in my opinion the eye looks a little bit weird. So let's change it. Let's enter this pre-comp and select the eye layer, then select the pen tool and adjust the path of the shape to fit the desired look. Alright, now we can go back to the master comp and see what we've created. In my opinion, this looks very nice, and with that we have finished the tutorial. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.